Hey, how's everyone doing? Yeah? Feeling good? Welcome to the afternoon of GTM and GMT. I will say, it is not lost on us that it is BST right now. So I'm sure you all were thinking it. I'm here to say we know it. I like to think it's GMT +1, so hopefully you're all leaving with a +1 friend, maybe? Some laughs? Yeah? No? Okay. Well, I am delighted to be here with Sharron from Terrapinn. She's the COO of Terrapinn. For those of you who don't know Terrapinn, it is a very large, been around for 40 years, I believe. Is that right? 40?
Yeah.
14?
Yeah,
yep.
40, yeah.
40, not 14. B2B events company, does a tremendous amount of work, over 90 events happening throughout the year. Just thinking about how much we took to put on this event, that is essentially 2 of these, even bigger than this, 10x this a week. And Sharron is truly the real deal. I think we actually met before I even started at Clay. And one thing that struck me is that as a COO, you really think about revenue at the heart of everything that you do and every decision that you help the business make. Also undergoing, and have been for the last 18 months, a massive AI transformation and infrastructure change. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But thank you, Sharron, so much for joining us today.
Welcome. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I feel a little bit of a fraud because I'm not a GTM engineer. I understand the platforms, but yeah, I've been blown away this morning by those incredible presentations, and I get the theory, but I couldn't execute it. So nothing too technical from me.
I think you're selling yourself short, but we'll get into the meat a bit. I do want to set the scene a little bit for some of the challenges that you've been dealing with at Terrapinn. Mentioned 90 events, 90 plus events. That happens across, I believe, nearly 40 verticals. So everything as diverse from aerospace to solar to healthcare, so really wide range. And you have 150 sales reps across 6 continents. And correct. Running events across all of those continents as well. So very global business. Tell us a little bit about what that data challenge actually means for you, what it's looked like over the last years you've been there.
Yeah, so we do 90 B2B events, and we've now bucketed those into 39 different brands, and each of those brands has, well, we've built out ICPs now on each of those brands, and each of those ICPs can be from 20 to 40 different personas. So the number of personas that we are marketing to, or we have to get data on, and you know, I mean, someone asked me last night at dinner, what's one of the hardest data challenges, what's one of the hardest personas you have to go and find? And I thought, well, probably solar installers in Vietnam. And we don't just want them in Vietnam, we want them just in Ho Chi Minh. So we're looking at global data. So that then adds on the other challenge. So there's lots of different personas, hundreds. And then global, and how we have to slice that around is always been a massive challenge for us. But data's always been at the heart of what we do.
Yeah. So massive data challenge, one that you've sort of been tackling over the whole time that you've been at Terrapinn. I think what's interesting is you were sort of tasked in thinking about this AI transformation. I'm sure almost every COO in the world is thinking about how AI is being applied. But you have approached it separately and differently than I think what we often see, which is this kind of application top-down. You really approached it from this data layer up, starting with the infrastructure, starting with the ICP definition. You mentioned data is at the heart of everything you do, but what drove that as being the starting point? Tell us a little bit about maybe what the world looked like for you beforehand and what drove starting there.
So that's kind of the story I tell now, but I guess the reality really is we didn't start that way, and we had some misfires at the start, and then realized, well, actually, and now I use the phrase, you know, shit in, slop out. So, you know, and that's, you know, and when you're looking at AI, if you're not giving it the right context and the right data, then you are going to get slop. And then seeing that as a massive problem, when you're serving that either upwards to your CEO or you're serving it outwards to customers is a massive problem. And then when you're doing that on scale, you've got a very big problem. So it was having a first few initial forays into some of the AI tools and looking at the tools, then realizing how this problem could really become a very big problem. That's when we paused and said, right, okay, we need to really look at the data layer first, so that we can if we can get that, if that will underpin everything else that we then do. And then we can layer on lots more of AI, outward-facing AI tools to be able to do it. And I thought Cody's presentation this morning was fantastic, and completely spoke to me when, you know, he's talking about data before copy. And I've always said this, there's a fantastic, I mean, I've been around a long time, and a guy called Drayton Bird, who is probably the grandfather now of direct marketing, as we used to call it. And he would talk about, you know, if there's one thing you're going to do to improve response, it would be look at your target and who you're targeting, and that's exactly what Cody said this morning. And I think now that's even more amplified with AI, and you can get a lot of stuff out there, but if it goes to the wrong people, it's not going to work. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how quick or how much you got out. If it's going to the wrong people, it's not going to respond. So that's still a fundamental of marketing that now I think is even more relevant.
I mean, we want, part of the thesis for this event was to get really tactical, very specific on things that other people can take away as well. I'm curious, can you tell us what you were doing before and maybe what that looks like now? Because one of the stats I've heard you mention to me, I think we talked about this last night, is you've gone from list building that took months to list building that took minutes. That's a material change.
Yeah.
What changed? What was actually changing for you under the hood from that old world to that new world?
Yeah, so I mean, when we were building before, marketing managers were briefing data bureaus, we were building data. It was a static in a moment time, but we know that changes continually. So then the minute you've built it, it's old, it's out of date. But that's what we were doing before, and it would take months because you've got to brief it, then it's got to go in, someone's researching it, then it's coming back, then you've got to load it, then you've got to campaign to it, etc. And now we can do that. We do that. We're setting that up as routine so that actually now we can get that refreshed all the time. So you're always getting net new data coming in across all the ICPs, across all of those events. We're not there yet, but that's what we're building out with audiences. So that's where the new audiences piece from Clay really comes into its own for us, that we can have those workflows running all the time and building that data down. But also the cost of the other thing is not just the time and the quality of what we're getting, but also the cost. I mean, we are now spending probably shouldn't say this to Clay because you'll be putting up your credits, but we're probably spending 1/10 of what we were spending 3-4 years ago on data, and we've been migrating that over now. But it's become a lot more accessible and a lot better quality.
And is that from some consolidation within that? What's driven that cost reduction for you? Efficiencies or what?
So we've not quite pushed through some of the changes on the efficiencies that I think will be coming, and a lot of that is on a people level. There's going to be some role changes around all of that. But the cost is really just literally the cost of acquiring it. Just literally paying the cost of credits for records versus when you're getting humans to research this data before. It's less than 1/10 of what we were paying before. So and then that's allowed us to use that money to invest in the technology, to invest in the data layers that we're putting in as well, and actually reduce marketing spend. So the other thing we've actually seen, we've reduced our marketing spend down from, I think, about 4 or 5 years ago. So just coming out of COVID, we were spending about 6 or 7% of our revenue on marketing. We have two parts of marketing. We have the kind of the GTM stuff, the leads for our sponsorship and exhibition sales guys, but then we have what we call audience acquisition. So that's getting people to attend our shows. We were spending about 6 or 7% on marketing to attract the audience. Mm-hmm. Now we're spending 2%.
Wow, that's a big change.
2% of revenue, so yeah.
And that's on the cost side. Is there anything, especially around the efficiency side, that you're finding your teams are able to do today that they may not have been able to do before?
Yeah, lots. It's relieving up a lot of marketing managers' time. So that's actually creating a different issue for us. So what are they doing with their time? But a lot less time for them building out data. So they can be spending it on channel, looking at messaging, and I guess the whole orchestration level. But from a business perspective, this is where I really see the benefit of what we're doing, because ultimately what events are about is bringing buyers and sellers together in the business world. So that's what that's what we do. That's our gold dust. That's what we're looking to do. When we do that, we have a great show. We can sell more exhibition stands, get more revenue. You can get more people coming to the show. And so the more we can learn about what we call the sell side are, so who they want to meet versus then who the buy side are, what problems they've got and who can solve it. As we can match that better, and we are doing that with Clay, we're doing that, that can feed into the flywheel of then getting more from both sides. So that's where I really see the power of what we're doing. It's not so much in the efficiencies of the marketing team. It's why we've not really spent so much time down there at the moment. It's more on what we can build out from a business perspective.
Yeah, I find that really interesting because it's kind of bringing together what it sounds like was fairly siloed on one side of kind of customers and prospects and bringing that into actually sort of one continuous ecosystem.
Yeah.
Which sounds like it's a big change from how you were running that historically.
Yeah, and again, because in an event's life cycle, someone might sign up, but things will obviously change. But before you weren't getting that, you're just getting a cut in time when they filled out a form, or we booked them on, or they signed a contract. Now we can keep that up to date. Who's won a new customer? If they've won a new customer, can we get them coming to the show? Mm-hmm. Can we invite them on their behalf? Can we tell them to invite them on behalf? If someone's got funding, then we can get the sales team to go back and upsell to them. So we could, keeping that live and going is, we were not able to do any of that before. So just being in theory, being able to do that, we're not quite got all of that built out. There's so much that we're building out, so many different use cases. But that is the big idea on how we could do that and bringing that all together.
I want to take a little bit of a step back organizationally because you're not a revenue operations leader, like we've heard from this morning. Yep. You're a COO.
Yep.
And so your remit spans much more widely, obviously, across the big business. These are fundamental changes to the ways it sounds like your marketing and your sales teams have run in the past. What has the organizational change management actually looked like for you? What have you had to change top down or within teams to actually move toward this new world of these continuous flywheels, of better kind of data infrastructure, lots of different ways of working within that? What does that look like for you?
Probably the honest answer at the moment is we probably haven't changed too much organizationally just yet. Okay. That's coming. It will come. But I think the biggest change is on how we talk about data within the organization. So data's, it's often seen as back office. It's often seen as the necessary evil of marketing. It's just, and we've always had a very volume-based outlook on it. Get more. Email more, direct mail more, even before that. But now that's changing, so that it's being seen as a much more strategic layer in what we do and how it's going to push us forward. And I think the organizational change at the moment is coming more senior on how we structure, how we build out. So our tech team's getting bigger. We've made new hires in that area, but at the moment we haven't really restructured the older team, the more traditional team. But that will come as we get the top layer. Do you have a hypothesis on what's going to change within sales and marketing? I think that we tend to hire what I would term generalist marketers. Who when they're marketing a show, they do everything on it. So from the data to the creative to the digital advertising. So they do the whole thing on their show pretty much. But I think that role's going to go. I think that's going. A really good GTM engineer, and if you get the whole process going, can do so much of that at scale, and that will respond so much better. Because back to that point, if the data is better at the front end, then, and to Cody's point earlier, that, it almost doesn't matter what you're saying to people, but if you're, not quite, but if you're sending to the right people at the right time, then you're going to get a better response. So I do think the generalist marketer, and as someone that's come from that background myself, that's a little bit heartbreaking, but I think, many of those people should be looking to reskill into GTM engineers, but we've had problems moving people into that role. I want to stay on that for a minute because a lot of the conversations I've had with many of you, and we were having some conversations last night, was on exactly this point, which is
this rise of go-to-market engineer and go-to-market engineering. I think Ajin was up there trying to hire and poach from some of you out there today. So kudos to them for trying. But you've had some issues sort of trying to do that conversion. So taking those marketing generalists who are within Terrapinn and bringing them over to the go-to-market engineering discipline. Why has that been hard? What's been the challenge with making that transition for some of the more traditional roles? And I'm sure there are some that will actually do that effectively. But what have you seen within that evolution?
I think really just a lot of resistance at the start. Maybe we're trying too early. Maybe if I try again now when we've got some proven use case and they can see what's happening. I think they thought it was a step backwards. I think they see that part of their job as the boring piece, as that's not exciting, whereas that's the bit that really excites me and anyone that's into that stuff. That's the best bit about marketing. And they think their job is creative, and actually the creativity is in building the clay tables. That's where the creativity really comes in. That, to me, creativity isn't about doing really pretty diagrams or images or writing great copy. The really clever piece is what we do there. So there's probably more of an education piece to go on, and I think some of them we can bring over. But I mean, yeah, when we tried, we couldn't get people to put their hands up. Then we strong-armed a few people. Then we had a few misfires where they spent a lot of credits by mistake, and then they got scared. And so then we've ended up actually now we've hired some GTM engineers based in Pakistan to run a lot of workflows. But actually, I think we really do need people with product knowledge, customer knowledge. Yes. Because it's one thing getting people just to execute workflows that you're building and just say, okay, now build this out. But what you really need to get the whole engine really working much better is for these people to come back with ideas, and how you can build and fuel it much better. And I think they need real product knowledge, customer knowledge, and understand what we're doing. Particularly when we're going over so many different verticals, so many different ICPs. It's not actually a copy and paste job for each one. You've actually really got to go and think about, okay, now how am I going to go and find solar installers in Vietnam versus C-suite in fintech in Dubai? It's very different, very different.
And so today, it sounds like stopgap right now is external go-to-market engineering that you've been able to kind of bring in. That's been a stopgap, and then the vision is still to bring those into the org and have those in-house because they'll have the context of the business internally. Is that right?
Yeah, I think, I was just talking with my colleague earlier, and I think what we need to do is probably have someone senior internally that can really drive the GTM role. And they're probably not going to come from an internal marketing background. Probably bring someone else in. Maybe I've got someone in mind. Maybe internally we could do that, but I think it needs championing and building out much bigger. And we've got two different parts of the business, said before. So you've got the more traditional GTM pushing leads into pipeline for our sales reps, and I think that GTM team needs to report into our sales leaders. And then you've got what we call the audience development side, so getting attendees to come. And I think then that still belongs within marketing, but probably under a different guise. But so it's two different bits on how we're looking at that.
We were speaking before as well about not only roles changing, but channels, maybe not the channels themselves changing. The channels have always existed, but perhaps some of the tactics within those actually really evolving in this new world. I'm interested what for you has resonated there, what's changed, or what are you seeing start to shift?
For us, we're seeing channels like WhatsApp becoming much greater, and so I loved it when you guys put on the QR code, which I also got very excited about as well. But
hopefully it's not the most exciting thing today.
Because we do the same, and we're doing that on scale. So we're finding that, and it's a one-to-one channel where you can have a lot more one-to-one dialogue. Whereas email, I mean, there are new systems coming out, but it really still is. It still is one-to-many. Really, it's not as great. So we're finding channels like WhatsApp, and particularly in markets like the Middle East and in Asia, where it is the primary channel of communication. So we're putting a lot into WhatsApp and how we can build that out. And that requires great data behind it. So you've got to have the telephone numbers. You've got to know that they're valid, and in order for that to work at scale. So that's a big part for us. But yeah, I mean, I think that something else that's been really interesting for me from dinner last night and from this morning's session as well is actually what I'm hearing from other people is that one of their most important channels that's coming, or most effective channels that's coming out at the moment is events, which music to my ears, obviously, because that's what we do. But then it got me really thinking about and seeing Adjen's presentation this morning about what they were doing in Money 2020, which is one of our competitors, and how they're looking at data around that. Then I think that there's a really interesting joined up marketing between event and B2B marketer that we can really look at, and so that, you know, how we're positioning the events in the industry as an industry at the moment is that we're positioning ourselves as the antidote to AI, because this is happening for real, and it's, you know, we haven't paired on ChatGPT, and so it's happening for real, and you know, and so it's becoming a much more trusted channel as well, and that's what I think about WhatsApp as well. That's also where you can get that one-to-one communication.
I think you said to me, yes, it's the answer to AI, but AI is able to make serendipity happen at events in a way that it maybe wouldn't have happened before if you have the right data, and I found that particularly powerful.
Yeah, I think the other thing that, when we were talking earlier and said that I think the great thing about data and what we can do and what we can do with Clay is we've always said the great thing about events is the serendipity that happens. That's we've always, you know, spouted that term so much, but actually with data, really good data, is that you can actually have curated serendipity. So you can know who should, or you can have a very good idea of who should be meeting who, and put them in the same room, sit them at the same table. So serendipity will always happen in the ladies, or, you know, in the queue for lunch. But actually, we can curate that serendipity a lot more, and then then events become even more powerful, and that's through data. That will be done through data. Yeah,
lots of delight to be made there. I know we're over time, but I thought I'd maybe ask one last question to you, because you are 18 months into this journey. You've done there's been a lot of change in the organization. You're looking at that across people changes, across infrastructure changes. I think we have many people in the room who may be a little earlier on their journey. If you were to give maybe one piece of advice to someone who is, let's say, 12 months behind Terrapinn in some of that kind of overhaul, what would that piece of advice be?
I think it would be, don't bite off more than you can chew, which is definitely what we've done. So now we're trying to roll everything out across all 90 shows, because we've got all the data in one place, and it's become quite hard. So take one use case and do it really well, and do it as a small use case, not so much as a pilot, so I don't really like that term, but just take a use case, build it out, and then even just a small ROI, see if you can prove it, and then you can scale from there. So I think don't try, and we have bitten off more than we can chew, and we've dialed it back a bit, but I think that's that's what I would do if I could go back 12 months, yeah.
Great, so start with one thing. Great.
Yep.
Sharron, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are so delighted to get to work with your leadership and get to watch all the things that Terrapinn is doing. So
brilliant.
We're excited to see what you do next. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Okay.
Oh, that's ours, yeah.